This is your Daily 5 for Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. I came across a story over on Ars Technica, which has been fascinating because I've been thinking about it since I read it on Monday. And I really think it's a nuanced thing to think about in terms of the application of AI tools and where consent is involved, not even from the original creators, but from those who may be putting funds toward using these tools for something they weren't aware of. So the background is, there is a website titled Gaming Alexandria, which apparently has been around for over a decade. It is a site that is focused on mostly Japanese video game materials, box art, magazine, things like that. And the site's goal is to preserve these things by translating them, making them available to the public, and it has a Patreon where people can donate money towards that purpose. And there was apparently a post where one of the individuals associated with it, and I don't know if this is the person who's the head of it or what, they obviously must be fairly prominent just based on the way I'm reading this, but this individual was talking about the fact that they were augmenting their work with vibe-coded AI tools. And this was to translate and post things from a huge number of publications and other materials. And this caused quite a split, where there were people who said, well, yeah, with the amount of materials you're trying to deal with, there's no way you'd be able to do it on your own. And acknowledging that they had been using OCR tools, which if you don't know what OCR is, I believe it's optical character recognition. I don't know if I'm getting those letters right. But essentially, it's where you can have a computer look at something written or published and then translate it into a digital text file or a digital publication file of some kind. Those have been around for a long time. Those well predate the current AI tool stuff. And they've had their problems in terms of reliability. So it only makes sense that if you're using those, you would probably want to have an AI-powered version to increase their translation ability. Obviously, as with all AI tools, but even with OCR before it, there are problems with mistranslation and that type of thing, so you don't want to necessarily rely on it for a scholarly work, which this individual pointed out that, hey, you want to double-check these things if you're going to cite it for something, but it does allow you to do work far quicker than you would be able to do on your own. And so it seems like it's a rough, 50-50 or so split with the community where a number of people or a number of individuals were okay with those funds being spent because they understood the task at hand and they thought this was the only way to reasonably accomplish it. And then there were a lot of people who were very upset because they felt like they were not notified. They didn't want to donate to these funds, probably because they just don't like the idea of AI and don't want to contribute towards it. And they're also concerned about inaccuracies from those translations, which again, the researcher doing this had pointed out, hey, this could have errors. So they were clear about that, but acknowledged that they probably should have given a little more notice on what was going on. And I think it's interesting because looking at it, I do think that trying to expect that human beings, there was one number cited here, 1,700 plus publications, to expect a small group of people, this is not a huge Fortune 500 company with, 10,000 employees or anything, but to expect that to be translated and have people doing it is probably not going to be something that's going to happen in the short term. In fact, many of these Patreon people, the supporters, would probably be long dead before they even got halfway through this, based on having to do error correction, make sure your spelling's right, have somebody help you with translation, where a machine will speed that up. On the other hand, I do think that if these people were using these tools, then the people contributing should have had some say in it, meaning they should have been notified, hey, this is something we're looking at. If that's not something you're comfortable with, then feel free to terminate your membership, which is what a lot of them did after the fact, but obviously very upset that they didn't have the opportunity to do it before contributing to something that they didn't want to support. So there's really two sides to this. This feels like, to me, a reasonable application of the technology. Obviously, you have to let people know that because there may be inaccuracies, but it does allow something that otherwise would probably be very, very difficult to humanly accomplish to be done. And there is a benefit to getting more information in front of people than less. But on the other hand, to not allow people to know what was going on, especially with something where surely these individuals knew that this is a hot topic, people are not all in on this stuff, and if they're contributing money and then they find out they're contributing to something that they don't want to support, they are going to be upset. Whereas if they've been notified and been allowed to say, no, I'm going to terminate this, they probably would have been far kinder about it than as opposed to being surprised by it. So it's an interesting story. Read through it. I'm going to link to it, of course. And I'd be curious what your thoughts are, because to me, I really do see both sides of this. But like I said, it's a nuanced examination of AI and how people interact with it. So interesting stuff. Later.